Thank you for being here. I again want to welcome the students, the faculty, and also extend a very special welcome to our career advisor panelists. I can clap for them. So I'm the Alumni Board President. I'm Dr. Adrienne Hatton. And again, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy day to be here with us for this lunch event. And so do feel free to enjoy the lunch. The Mandel School Alumni Board, of which I'm the president, works to connect alumni and students by conducting events such as this one. Career Connections is an event that we host often in the fall, and also we support activities at homecoming and during reunion weekend. Supporting students is one of the primary goals of the Alumni Association, because we all remember what it was like when we were here. We want you to succeed and to keep the legacy of our degrees and the Mandel School going strong, and we are already worldwide. Alumni support the school through annual fund donations and various other funds which help provide students with scholarships each year. And so if you see an alumnus today or tomorrow, be sure to thank them. Nada DeFranco is the Alumni Relations Executive Director, and she's here somewhere. And she is an amazing staff person and liaison to the Alumni Board. We really appreciate her. Please contact Nada to reach alumni if you have other questions or information you'd like for networking purposes after today. And also remember to connect with the school on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. Before our panelists introduce themselves, I'd like to encourage students to think about further questions. I know some questions have been collected already, and we'll start with those when we get to the panel. We also ask that if you have other questions that you write them down, because at some point we'll be calling you to that mic stand over there to ask you to ask those questions. Even if a panelist doesn't have the same focus or specialty as you, they have great career advice and experience you can learn from. We have representatives from the MSSA/MSW, from the MNO, which I hold, and from various other, what do you call them? Those things y'all have. Concentrations in the program. So, as has happened in the past, you may end up changing your career path based on some of the advice you get from these amazing people. Now I'd like to ask each panelist to introduce yourselves. You get about 2 minutes, I was told, each for your introduction. Please tell us a little bit about your career journey. Oh, then she said I'm supposed to start with myself. Yes, I'm reading the notes, but I didn't read that part. So you guys have about 30 seconds to think about 2 minutes of introduction, which you probably already wrote down. I'm Dr. Adrienne Hatton. As I mentioned, I'm an MNO, class of 1996. Yes, there was a school here back then. And the program was a concentration of the law school, the business school, and the social work school at that time. I've since enjoyed a long, amazing career in nonprofit management, working in organizational development, planning, compliance, training, diversity, equity, and inclusion, et cetera, with social services, government, and education organizations. I have taught in higher ed. I'm currently a nonprofit management consultant because you get a certain age where you just don't want to have to go every day, but you do, but you're at home in your office. So anyway, enough about me, and let's start with Alex and just move down the line.
I graduated from the Mandel School in 2020 with an MSSA and MNO degree. I currently work at Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority. I've worked there since I graduated. I am the Mobility and Landlord Outreach Coordinator and Ombudsman, so that's a mouthful. So I wear a lot of different hats there. I manage a HUD-funded research project helping families with Section 8 vouchers move to areas of opportunity in Cuyahoga County. I manage all the interactions with our landlords within the Section 8 or Housing Choice Voucher Program, and I manage several other special voucher programs. I think that's it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Demetra Stiles. I graduated MSSA in 2017. I am currently a social worker at the VA. I work in home and community-based care and also a crisis social worker at University Hospital, as well as a community researcher. Let's see, yes. About my job. I assist veterans with home care, assessing their needs, connecting them to community services. For UH, like I said, I do research, focus on Black dads and healthcare, and also kind of like a family structure and how we can help Black males and get access to care, how to help them be better fathers. And for the crisis piece, I work in an ED on the weekends, and of course I see a whole bunch of just bizarre things and assess them for placement or follow-on care when they get discharged. So that's it for me.
I'm Jasmine Chandler. I am a Social Security disability attorney. This is something new for me, actually, as of this year. I worked for the Social Security Administration after graduation for about 14 and a half years, and I just realized that I could use my gifts to do more to help people. I missed really being hands-on with people, and so now I help people file for disability benefits. I guide them through the process and handle any type of issues like resolving overpayments or continuing disability reviews.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlene Nichols. I am a proud graduate of the Cleveland State School of Social Work. I currently work as a geriatric community social worker for the Western Reserve area on aging, where I assist older people in getting home care services. I've worked in several different capacities. I've worked with people living with HIV and AIDS. I've worked with moms and children struggling with drugs and alcohol and mental illness. And so all those experiences allow me to effectively work with the senior population at this time.
I'm Jeff Locks. I'm the president and CEO of an organization called the Wingspan Care Group. Wingspan serves as the administrative and management organization that sits above client-serving organizations that you may have heard of, Belfair, Applewood Centers. I graduated with my MSSA in 1995, and then at some point for about 10 years I taught the second year clinical social work methods course here. All I ever wanted to be in life was a child therapist, and as we go through these questions I'll talk a little bit about how I moved from being a therapist to now running an organization with a $100 million operating budget where I'm responsible for lots and lots of management activities and very, very few clinical activities.
All right. Well, thank you all for your introductions, and we'll get started with the questions, which will be an opportunity for you to share more about yourselves and also to give our audience some time also to think about questions that they may have. So let's begin. So I think you made a good point that we often don't graduate and end up 20, 30 years doing what we thought we would be doing when we came out of graduate school. So let's start with a question around what was your transition like from grad school into the workforce? And in answering that, if you have any specific suggestions that you can share with our audience for finding a job or a career. So I'm just going to throw it out to you guys and let you all decide it. Who wants to share? Feel free to do so. Multiple people.
Well, I'll start. My transition to the workforce was a little shaky. I graduated in 2009 in the middle of the economic downturn. So although I had a job when I graduated, I went to work for a local nonprofit. My position was grant funded. And so I graduated in May, I started work the next morning, and by October I didn't have a job. And so that was difficult for me because I had to understand, like, even though I wanted to be in the nonprofit sector, that might not have been the best choice for me. And so I was unemployed for a little while. My grant was refunded the following April, but in the meantime, I had just started looking in other areas, and I just happened upon a government job with the Social Security Administration. My advice to all of you would just be to be open. You don't know what opportunities will come. You can learn. You all have the ability to learn new things, and so you can learn a new skill. You have skills that are transferable. So just be open to what comes.
Yeah, I'll second that. My transition was pretty good. When I graduated, I had started to work for UH because I was already a mental health tech there. But part of that is that I wanted the first opportunity that I could grab. Kind of piggybacking off what she said is that it is very good to, whatever opportunity presents itself, not saying you have to settle, but whatever opportunity is out there, you're going to learn. So whether that's community mental health, whether that's working for some other nonprofit, you're going to take those years, especially those first 2 years, to really get an understanding of social work. Even though I went into straight into a hospital after I graduated, it was a lot of stuff that I just didn't know. Like, I had all of this clinical knowledge in my head, but I knew nothing about the community. I knew nothing about resources in my area, and it was a struggle. Like, I had all of this, like, I can tell you a diagnosis, the front and back, but I couldn't tell you where the food bank was. So that was a problem for me. So if you go into the community, which, a lot of us do, learn those resources, take the opportunity to learn. Don't think it's some dead-end job because, you have to work at one of our mental health communities. It's good work there. Take it, learn from it, get those necessary skills, because you're going to use those skills, whether it's patience or clinical skills. You're going to use those skills far into your career.
I was impatient. I was sitting in my second year. I was ready. I wanted to do the work. I was ready to hit the streets and help people. I think you all are entering the social work workforce at a really crucial time. The need across our country, certainly in our own community, is unprecedented. If you look at the numbers, especially in the kids' world where I work, depression, anxiety, and trauma in unprecedented numbers. We have an equal pandemic in the behavioral health world as we did with COVID. And so there is no shortage of need. Our communities need you. And taking your education, and as many of my co-panelists have said, there is a broad world of work out there. There are organizations with missions that you've never even considered. You just haven't been exposed. And so I would also echo, do what you're passionate about. And I guarantee there's an organization in town that shares that same passion and has clients waiting.
I will also echo everything that was said. However, I was a late bloomer, so I was raising my son along with going to school. So I was already basically working in the field while I was going to school at the same time, getting those social work experiences before I got my degree. So sometimes you're juggling, as a late bloomer, you're juggling several different things at the same time. And then the transition for me was pretty easy because I was already doing the work before I got my degree. So I say, just like everyone else here said, remain open, get as many experiences as you possibly can, because you're just adding to your tool belt till you get your dream job.
I transitioned into the workforce at a really unique time and a time of a lot of uncertainty, May 2020, so at the beginning of the pandemic. And so I really relied on the connections I had made with my professors, with faculty and staff here, with other students, other professionals working in the field to try to find a job. I'm sure the professors wouldn't appreciate me saying this, but I sent my resume to every single professor in this school and said, if you have a job that you think I'd be good for, please forward my resume along. So I would definitely try to connect with those around you. and trying to find a job. Additionally, just like everybody else said, remain open to different types of opportunities. When I was in school here, I had one population I was very, very passionate about, and I still am. And I thought, I will never accept a job not working with that population directly. But now that I have more experience, I understand the kind of work I would want to do with that population, I wouldn't have been able to with the level of experience I had. And I enjoy the work that I do now. So remain open.
All right, thank you all. I would just add real quick, I was working at J. Netna Hunter while I was in school. As soon as I got my degree, I resigned from J. Netna Hunter and moved into a nonprofit planning job. So again, thinking about where you are, you never really know. And the other thing I would say is, as you're looking for jobs, look at the job description, not at the job title, because you'll find that a lot of things you also have room to evolve them, but also titles are just as varied as, I don't know, birds in the sky. So don't get stuck on just looking for a title. So our next question is, what is an area that you would not want to work in again within the field that you experienced, and why? Or on the other hand, what's an area that you have worked in and want to experience again?
I think for me, actually, I have the same answer to both, kind of. Mental health. So right now, I don't do mental health, but I kind of struggle with wanting to do it again. But it's a very difficult field to constantly navigate on an everyday basis because it takes a lot out of you. But at the same time, I mean, for me personally, I feel it's a high need, especially in like a Black population, which I like to focus on. So I personally struggle with wanting to do that because, you know, we get so far in our careers and then we sometimes may forget of why we got into this. I personally got into it to be a therapist, and I did do it for some time, but it was at that age I was at, it was taking a toll on me, so I just couldn't do it. But it is very rewarding. There's good stories, there's bad stories about it being exclusively a therapist. I kind of get my kick now with working in psych, but it's really an assessment, a high and by, and I'm sending you off to Laura Wood or whatever. So I would say for me, being a therapist more and really engaging in that is something that I want to do, but it is kind of like a conscience for me because of how I know that how invested I would be in it.
Anyone else?
I think for me is working with women and children with drug and alcohol. It's hard for me to look at the impact that disease have on the children and how disconnected the moms are around their children. So for me, I could not, it was difficult for me to separate and not want to fix the mom so she could be a great mom, because I think we all are great moms. So that's a field that was really too emotional for me to stay in. So I would not want to go back to that.
Prior to graduate school, I worked in direct practice or direct advocacy work with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That's my passion population. I love working in the IDD field, and I would love to do it again if I could, but I realized then that direct practice wasn't for me. It was something that I found hard. It was hard to disengage at the end of the day and kind of leave it at home or leave it at work and not bring it home. So I kind of had a good idea before I even started that I was not going to do direct practice. So I think part of the journey is knowing your strengths and knowing where you really excel.
Okay. Anyone else before we move on? Okay. All right. I would say I mentioned that I left Jane Edna Hunter, but I didn't leave Jane Edna Hunter because the people that Jane Edna Hunter serves are the same people that you serve in the education system, and variety of nonprofits serve the same population. So I would say that, that means that you should always leave situations in a good way, because it's very likely that you're going to either reconnect with some of the people you work with and or some of the people that you served in some really good ways. Okay, so since graduating, this is a trick question, how often have you switched positions, and what were some of the factors that led you to switch? We've already heard a few things, just even about realizing it wasn't a fit or other opportunities, but let's go. Jeff, you ready?
So I've had several position changes, all promotions, and one of the things I learned is that our field is a bit like medicine in this way. They think, oh, you're a really good practitioner. You should run stuff. Really, it's two different skill sets, which you find that, I used to say, oh, when I'm the boss, I'm just going to use my therapeutic skills. It's a little bit different. One of the things as a clinical social worker, my job was often to help people feel better and like they're doing the right thing. As a boss, sometimes your job is to make people feel a little bit worse, like maybe you're not always doing the right thing. What I would say in terms of advice is don't be in a rush to run stuff. Everybody wants the director title, and I will tell you that I am so much better as an administrator because I had time doing what I loved. I did the work. I worked with people. I wanted to be a clinician. It's all I ever wanted to be. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still say, oh, you're a therapist for kids who just happens to be doing this other job. Do the work. Do the part that you love. Everyone says life is short, and that is true. Your career is long. You will have plenty of time for titles and to be in charge. In my mind, there's nothing more valuable than the actual work itself. So don't be in a rush for that director title.
I would echo, don't be in a rush to move up into a leadership position. I spent about 8 years of my career with the Social Security Administration doing the direct service work, whether that was taking claims at the front window or going out into the community, helping people understand how they could go back to work and keep their benefits. During my last 5 years, I worked in programmatic audits. And so when there was an issue where we said, oh, well, maybe we're not applying this policy right, I was able to take the perspective of, there are people on the other side of this. And so people who had not done that direct service work, looked at it from the perspective of, well, what resources does the agency have, without looking at the person focus. And so it's nice to be able to balance that resource perspective with something that's human driven.
I'll just make a comment. I'm somebody who hasn't switched positions since I haven't left, the CMHA since I started there when I graduated. I did get a promotion, but I will highlight the reasons why I've stayed in the current position. The first being that continued growth, that I was able to get a promotion within the first few years of working there. So knowing, okay, it's possible to have a career path here. That was really important to me if I decided to stay. Another important piece that we sometimes talk about is salary. I've been able to negotiate my salary and continue to get raises. Even when that wasn't really the norm of the organization, it's important to me. I went to school, I studied really hard to do this work, and I want to make a livable wage doing it as well. So part of the reason why I've stayed is I've been able to advocate for myself in the current position to be able to make a good living, and it's been rewarding for me.
Okay. And I would also add, one of the reasons for switching positions, I encourage people to be lifelong learners. So even after you get this degree, there's other certificates, there's other degrees, there's other things you have opportunity to learn more about, and that often has a lot to do with switching positions and having the ability or the desire to do so. So remember to be a lifelong learner. So continuing on, would any of the panelists like to share any of your experiences in home-based social work services that stands out to you?
I can answer. It is an experience within itself. I think that it's very different than seeing someone in the clinic, of course, because they're in the comfort of their own home. And doing a home visit, it's a lot of, I guess, anxiety going into someone's home, and you don't know what's on the other side. I've been not attacked, but the dog jumped on me, like pets and, domestic disputes, stuff like that goes on while you're there, and you're just sitting here like, oh, how do I get out of here? It's a lot of preparation that you have to think about of, if this goes left, how do I get out? But also you see a different side of whomever you're speaking with. They're more relaxed, they're more comfortable, they're more vulnerable because they're not in a pressure situation of a clinic. You're not pressure to get the information needed, then walk out. So I will say that I personally like it. I like working in the community. I like going to people's homes. It doesn't bother me, but I do know that there's just a lot of mental planning that goes into it, and it can be a very fun time, if you will. You spend time being outside and going to these different places. Sometimes your patient or client may make you a good meal. I don't know. It's pretty rewarding in my experience. For even when I was an intern, how I got involved a little bit with community work. Funny story is that I had for my second year placement, I went to my third option, and I was late to my appointment. I was very late to my appointment because I did not want to be at this place. And I was like, no, I'm gonna be clinical. I don't want anything to do with community work. And the person who interviewed me said, like, hey, for the rest of your life, maybe you're going to do communities, you're going to do clinical stuff, you're going to, work with people in mental health or whatnot. This is a good opportunity to learn a little bit about community and to see how people are in their home. And that always stuck with me. And I was like, I guess you're right. And ever since then, I just had a different opinion about going to someone's home. So I think it's pretty good. I like it personally better than being in the clinic, but that's just a personal opinion. There is no wrong way.
My organizations do a lot of home-based work, and one of the things that always strikes me is I'm not sure any of us, whether it's graduate schools, employers, do a good enough job of reminding us that this work is really community-based. And what does that actually mean? It means that one of the things I value so much about our voice as social workers is our training really is person and environment. And you would think, when you know that and you think that way, you would think that other helping professions bring that same perspective. And they don't always. Many helping professions are trained that somebody comes to you, they sit in front of you across a desk, and they say, hey, let me tell you what's wrong, and then you offer all of these fantastic interventions, and it all works. Our work is community-based. The need is community-based. So many people that we need to help don't have the same resources to get themselves to an office. Bringing the work to them, in my mind, that really is the heart of social work. Social work is community-based. And I marvel at we have home-based therapy teams, we have home-based case managers, and I marvel at them because they really are community warriors. They are in people's home, batting off the dog or petting the dog or whatever the situation is. And when I look across, specifically with adolescents, our home-based models get the most effective evidence-based outcomes of any model. So it works. We need to be where the work is.
Well, as a geriatric community social worker, primarily all of my experiences are home-based. I have to see my members at least every 90 days. I have to make sure that their services are in place. And the majority of the time that I have been a social worker, I have been going into people's homes. And it's not always easy because sometimes you have to go in someone's home and be very non-judgmental. Like if things are all messy and disarray, you still have to be able to service them and not really ask a whole lot of questions about why is this and why is that. So the only thing that I fear is the animals when I go there. So I politely ask them, can you put your animals away so I can focus on you? But almost every modality that I have worked in the past 20 years have been community-based and home-based.
Okay, and I think again it helps to have a broad definition. In my nonprofit space, I ended up working with a group called Koinonia Homes some years ago, and I was going into people's homes to interview them so that we could find housing for them in one of the Koinonia spaces, right? So that wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm gonna go do home-based social work. It was a space that I found myself in. But from years earlier of going into homes while at J. Netna Hunter, I learned that even if you have to come and talk about removing people's children, you have to have a level of respect, and you have to take some time to build trust with individuals, and you have to think, what if that were me on the other side, right? Because life happens. So as we continue on, I would say, so again, what skill sets are still helping you in your career, and what would you think all students should have? So I kind of started that off by just kind of saying having a respect for people and having a humility that life changes instantly, and where you are now, what's happening with your family now could be very different. I ended up raising or inheriting 4 nieces and nephews 12 years ago when my sister passed away, and it took me straight back to my J. Netna Hunter days, because all of a sudden I felt like, oh my God, I don't want my babies to feel like foster children. So it gave me a different set of skills to advocate when I advocated for services from them. But I had no idea back in the early 90s that I was going to end up in that space. So others, any skill sets that you have that are still helping you, or that you would recommend that students have as they're moving out of school into the workplace?
One of the things that was emphasized in a lot of my classes here that helped me as I got into leadership positions was you aren't always the expert. And so sometimes you have to go into a situation listening to the people who have been there, who have done the work, and then figure out, okay, what can I do next? I think that helps people relate to you, but it also tells them that you are there and that you care about their opinions, you care about who they are and how you can move forward together. So always just remember to listen to those around you. You don't have to be the smartest one in the room all the time.
One of the skill sets that I rely on is displaying a sense of empathy to my members and the people that I work with, because I've always think in my head, through the grace of God, there go I. And that has helped me throughout my entire career, is being able to empathize with my members, establish a rapport with them, and let them know that I'm there to service them. So that's one thing that I take with me at all times.
I would add my assessment skills, whether it's micro practice or macro practice. I think as helpers, we've got this do something energy, like we want to do something, and we're only effective if we've really listened and used assessment skills to what are we doing something about, and not just our view of it, really the people in the situation. Having those assessment skills, I think, really, really a core skill that you're going to use in a variety of settings and jobs.
To echo what others have said, coming into any new project, new job with a willingness to learn is really important. I sometimes say, like, with a level of humbleness, we guys are getting, we got these great educations, so we know a lot, but we may not exactly know how things work in the real world in practice. So coming with a level of humbleness is important, and I think the people who work with you will respect that. And I think also adaptability and kind of problem-solving skills are super important when we're dealing with situations like we are now, where government funding is kind of in question. These agencies, agencies including the one I work for and nonprofits who rely on that federal funding, are having to be creative and trying to find solutions to issues that may arise if funding does get cut. So being adaptable is really important.
Okay, and I think, Jeff, you mentioned earlier, too, about picking up some business skills along the way in case you find yourself in a leadership position in your organization. And also, again, maybe there's a grant program that you're running where you got to kind of understand, like, reports, and you got to understand outcomes. So, again, being a lifelong learner, I think, is important, and also thinking about where I want to be 5 years, 10 years from graduation.
I laugh all the time that I should have paid better attention in policy. I was sitting in policy going, I'm going to be a clinician. I don't need to know any of this. Now I find myself running an organization going, I probably should have paid more attention in Dr. Beagle's policy class.
Okay, so again, I'm just make sure I get my questions. So we talked about some of the skill sets. Have you all ever encountered a situation where you couldn't find a position that aligns with what you want to do? And if so, how did you go about finding a position? Well, while they're thinking, I would say broaden your horizons and broaden your perspective. Again, as I mentioned, about not just looking at job titles, but also looking at opportunities where you can get in a position and expand it and help it to grow. And I think somebody else mentioned earlier, and I would echo, think about life as sort of building a toolkit and getting tools for your toolbox. And sometimes you can get some tools that you're just like, wow, I didn't realize I picked that up from there. But I'll turn it over. I think Demetrius was getting ready to give an answer.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar about broad, and also, if your job does not have exactly what you're looking for, there's probably opportunities in the community to find that. For me, working at the VA, it's pretty straightforward. So what I do, and my supervisor's okay with it, but I do research in the community. I had a relationship back when I was coming out of grad school with some pediatricians, and that's where I do a lot of my passion work. Not really paid much for it. I do it because I love it, and I find worth in it of working with my target population. So just because your job doesn't have it doesn't mean you're limited to just your job. There's plenty of opportunities for someone willing to work in a certain population that you want to. So one thing I learned about working in hospitals in general is that there's always someone that wants to do similar work or has a similar passion. Or even if it's at your job, present it. What's the worst that can happen? Present it to your supervisor. Say like, hey, I see this problem. Can you think we can do this? And maybe it's not exactly what you're looking for, but it's something like similar or close. At the VA, I do a group for trauma. It's a clinical group, but it's focused on Black veterans. It is a clinical group that I do every week. It is something that's near and dear to me. It's I still get to do my clinical skills and whatnot. So there's not always, but a lot of times there is room to do something in your job that's my childhood friend. There's always room to do something. You just have to ask. You have to be motivated. You have to be open. You have to keep your name clean. Don't burn any bridges if you're leaving a company. And just because you leave a company, that doesn't mean it was, or a business or whatever, it doesn't mean it was all bad. Still keep a relationship. The clinic that I worked at straight out of grad school, it's the same clinic I do research with a couple of pediatricians, and yeah, it's still good.
Okay, and then the next question, which is always exciting to me, is I would love to start a nonprofit and did not realize that the Master of Nonprofit Organizations degree was an opportunity until a year into the MSW program. Would you recommend I obtain an MNO degree, or is it possible to achieve this without the degree? So I'm going to tell you, a lot of people start a nonprofit that do not have an MNO. One of the challenges, however, is what Professor Emeritus John Yankee told me years ago when I was in the MNO program. He said that you're going to go out into a field where you are going to have more experience in nonprofits than most of the people who work in the nonprofits that you are in. So having said that, it's again about that lifelong learning and about that willingness and ability to learn the skills that it will take to operate your business effectively. So I'm not deterring people from the degree, but I think there are definitely ways in the program to connect some of the courses. Maybe there's a way to take some electives so that you can pick up on some of those skills if you already know that you want to start an organization. And the other thing I would recommend is if that you are interested, that you kind of get to know. One of the other great advantages of being in the program was I met nonprofit leaders in Cleveland before I left the program. And over my career, I've run back into, sometimes work with and work for some of those people. But finding a mentor in a space that you want to get in could be another way to help you be able to bounce ideas off, to be able to kind of avoid some pitfalls, and again, to build your skill set. So if you ask me, I think the degree is amazing. It opens up so many opportunities, but it in concert with your social work degree or taking what you've learned in your social work program and being able to effectively run an organization, I think is equally as valuable, because you've got to have passion and you've got to have skill and you've got to have, the things you learn from working with the community. So no one person is all in everything, but you also then need to build a team that has some of those skills that you might not have. And that can also be another way to move into a nonprofit organization if that's a part of your vision. Alex, you got anything to add?
So during my final year here at the Mandel School, I helped my dad start a nonprofit, and I found that I really enjoyed my M&O degree. I think it really tied very well together with the MSSA, now MSW, and the things I learned here really helped us lay a good foundation for starting the nonprofit. I don't actively run it, my dad runs it, but I learned so much during my time here that I think we were able to avoid a lot of pitfalls or issues that other folks starting a nonprofit may experience.
And there's also people running nonprofits on our panel who don't have MNOs, so feel free to share as well. I wasn't cutting off responses.
Not necessarily directly related to the MNO, but just generally about the dual degree programs. If it's something you want to do it now. I was that student who wanted to do the dual degree with MSAS and the law program, and I said, no, I don't want to be in school for those extra years. But years later, I found myself going back to school for 4 more years while working. And so if it's something that you're interested in, if it's something that you want to pursue and you think that it's going to help you within your career, follow through and do it now.
Okay. All right, so thank you for that. And again, there's professors here that are in the MNO program. They're also great people to talk to, and they can perhaps give you suggestions on the courses and things you can do while you're in the program. And internships are also another way to build skills, and also board service. So I also recommend that you might choose to serve on the board of an organization that has a mission that you're interested in, and then you can also learn some of those skills from being in that space, but also contribute your professional expertise to that space as well. So boards are another way to be able to live some of your dreams and support some of the things that are important to you without necessarily being a salary or income, which is not a bad thing, okay? All right, so at this point, I wanted to open up the floor. So if there's any other questions, oh wait, I gotta give some swag away, I think. Okay, no, I don't have to do that yet. Okay, so I wanted to open up the floor to see if there were any other questions from you all. You can feel free to walk up to the mic because, again, we want to make sure we get your question in the sound. And then once the question is asked, then it's up to the panelists. You can just decide if you want to give some input on the question.
When you come up, we do ask that you state your name and your prospective degree that you are applying for here.
Or you can say your friend's name and their degree, and we would know.
Okay, I'm a little more short than I thought I was. Hi, my name is Jocelyn Feldman. I'm pursuing my MSW with a concentration in health, and my current position is community-based, which is mileage, but that's something else. And sorry, I just forgot. And I was wondering, because I think a couple of you mentioned that community-based work is different than direct practice, or it's not what you originally were thinking, because my position is more direct practice. I'm working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and mental health diagnoses, and I go to them because they can't come to us. So while it is community-based, I feel like it is also direct practice, but I was wondering if you saw them differently. How come, if so?
I would say I don't. I understand the micro and macro by definition, but in practice, it's all intertwined. You can't have one without the other. So yeah, my position is similar to that. It's that it is community based, but I work with the people on the individual level. However, also dealing with community agencies and kind of like that overarching perspective. Yeah, I do think they're closely related, and I don't see much difference between them, at least in my position.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No other sentences? Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Demetrius, that what we do in the textbooks and what we do when we get out into the world and start to practice, and then things ebb and flow. So there was a time where organizations kind of just work with their people, and then there was a time when it was, well, no, you should collaborate with other organizations who work with the same people. And then there was sort of a shift to, you just needed to have both, right? And you were working with people in the community, and you're in a role to help them learn their community. Well, you can't help them learn their community if you don't know their community. So you kind of find, again, that whole idea about, as a social worker, and I did do it for 6 years, trying to understand what people's needs are and then to be a resource. So you kind of find yourself sometimes waffling a little bit between, 3 courses and another course. And eventually you forget about all your courses and you just focus on, what you've learned and those tools in your toolkit. And you start to service, I think, just where you find yourself in a position to serve.
Also got something to add. I think social work is unique in the perspective that you can operate in between the two. So you're going to the individual and then you're stating the needs to the community. So you're working for the institution or whatnot, but you have a unique perspective, is that you can tell the institution, hey, what are the needs on the ground, and the institution can help implement things that affect the needs on the ground. So that's one of the things that I really like about social work, is that yes, we do learn micro and macro, but we're really in between those if we think about it, and that our job is to really bridge that gap.
Okay. Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Al Johns, and I'm in the Community Practice for Social Change concentration. And my question is, how do you balance filling your cup, or self-care, and staying focused on your work while also addressing structural inequalities?
Anyone? Look, that's the $1 million question on the wall right now, but anyone?
I think sometimes it's just about knowing when enough is enough and knowing when you need to disconnect. And so if you say, okay, I've gotten to the point where I'm just feeling overwhelmed by this, shut down your phone, go home, do something that you enjoy. Let it go for an hour or two. You know, just give yourself time to breathe, because between your work and everything that's going on in society, it is overwhelming. You just have to know what your boundaries are.
I don't know how to do this yet, but learning how to turn it off at times. And what I mean by turn it off, your job, turn it off. Don't take your job to you, like back home or to your family or whatnot. In that perspective, is that you're constantly thinking about social work and someone, thinking about a problem. Now that's different than turning it off from fighting for social change. So for me, I can turn off my job all day. Like my job is my job. There's nothing I can do about it. But the social change piece of it doesn't turn off, well, at least for me. So what I do to help me is that I remember that when I try to do things for social change, it brings me joy, it brings me happiness. I am part of the people that I am fighting for. But also too, I try to, when I have the time, pick up a hobby. So mine is trying to play the piano, which I'm terrible at, but I try. Pick up a hobby. When you're not doing the things that, fighting is what I call it, try to pick up a hobby. When you're not fighting, someone else is. Understand that we cannot fight 24/7, no matter what we are facing. Understand that, and it's okay to take time for yourself. It's a lot of stuff. The news cycle's not going to stop. Racism isn't going to stop. Oppression isn't going to stop. It's always going to be there. But what's very important is that you be there to fight it, and you cannot do it if you are ran down or just functional overload. So pick up a hobby.
Jeff?
Self-care, it took me a long time. It's a skill set like any other skills. You actually have to practice, I think. I did. I had to practice detaching. For me, something I learned early on that has been true throughout my career, it happens to be what I think as a human being also, not just a social worker. The line between helper and helped is really thin. I think when you're in graduate school, when we're learning all these things, it's really easy to start to think there are two kinds of people, helpers and helped, right? And what you learn is human beings are human beings, and the line is really thin. And any one of us who might leave work having been in the helper role all day may find themselves in a home situation where you're the one that's helped. And for me, that has brought a sense of humbleness. I think our work is sacred. I think it is a privilege to be with people at the hardest times in their life. I think it really is nothing short of sacred. We occupy a really special space, and that has a toll, right, on all of us. Depending on what's going on in our own community, what's going on in the world, and there's plenty going on. And so I would say it's really easy for people to say, well, you have to separate, your job and fill your own cup. It's not as easy to do. And so just like anything else, practice, find what works. For me, in my first job, I had a 45-minute commute, and so I had music and downtime in my car to be able to not walk in the door still thinking about work. It didn't always work, but that was one trick. And so just like the interventions and skills that you'll be working with clients on, you have to practice those same skills yourself.
I would agree, and I would also add, I was thinking of it, like I think you were kind of hitting on it too, that one person doesn't save the world, right? And as I get to what I heard was retirement or 35 years or something in August, I've learned that we have to kind of figure out, I think, where we want to have influence. Like you have a sphere of influence and you decide where you can have influence. And it typically isn't everywhere doing everything all the time. And then I think, because then you tend to dilute yourself and you're not giving a lot of energy to anything. So kind of keep your finger on your own pulse as you're being aware of the spaces and places that you're in, and think about what impact can I have here, and realize that real solutions happen like across sectors, they happen across people, and it's good to connect and operate, but find a little bit of your lane. As you mature and season in life, life will start helping you do that, but I encourage you to do that earlier so that that transition is smooth.
There is an online question, and we do encourage you to keep asking questions online. This is from Kayla in the MSW program. How do you stay informed about changes in social policies and practices that affect your work?
Identify really good sources. Find sources that you value and connect. There are so many online newsletters and online, but find the things that you value and find the things that apply to things that you're doing right now, because you can't know everything about everything because you will have analysis paralysis. But finding trusted, valuable sources and even individuals as resources would be one of my recommendations. Others?
Follow NASW.
Okay. NASW. Any other questions? Yeah, come on. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kamaria. I'm advanced standing MSW. So my question is, why social work and why the MNO? What made you pick this career instead of physician or anything else?
Here's the ugly truth. I wanted to be a psychologist. I couldn't get into psychology grad school to save my life, especially with kids. They take like 4 or 5 people a year, and my fantastic bachelor's degree qualified me to do nothing. So for me, it was like I wanted to be a therapist. I learned there were multiple pathways, and back in when I went to MSAS, it was the only game in town. Cleveland State didn't have a program yet. Kent was a little bit far, so for me, it was social work by default. As much as I love my social work identity, that's how I found social work.
I believe that I was born to be a social worker. I've always wanted to help people. I always found the need to help people. And today, if I can't do social work, I simply don't want to work. I love being a social worker. Now, do I love all the paperwork and all that stuff? Absolutely not. But the actual work, actually being in the trenches with my members and the people that I serve, is what I love.
I also wanted to be a therapist. And then I did 1 semester of direct practice courses, and I said, I can't do this. And so I switched to a macro track. I did community and social development. And honestly, I wouldn't have changed any of it. I think social work is a very valuable degree in the sense that you can reinvent yourself. You learn skills that will take you across, micro and macro practice. But it can also be, the skills can also be used in the corporate world or wherever else you choose to go.
I'm a psychologist too, but I don't regret my decision. I had an undergrad in psychology and sociology, but what really got me here is that when I graduated, I worked in a boys group home out by Toledo, and my first mentor was a retired social worker, and at the time I had no idea what social work was. And he kind of opened up the door. Then I did more research, and I'm like, oh, you can do all of these things. And as I continue to progress in my career, it's like this is to me better than, no disrespect to them, but this is to me better than being a psychologist, because I do work with them, but I can go into the clinical realm, I can go into the community realm, I can consult, I can work on a military base, like I can do all of these things at my disposal, and my toolbox is so vast. So yeah, why is I keep on getting wise every day, every year that passed in like social work. I keep getting wise. I keep getting these new things that I find out that we can do. Even joining the alum board here, the diversity of what our alum are. It's some things that I've never heard of a social work doing, and it's very amazing what this degree can take you.
When I was thinking about what I wanted to my career to be, I considered what am I internally motivated by, and I knew that I was internally motivated by helping others. And I wanted to make change in the place that I was at. So that's how I really chose the field. How I chose the Mandel School is when I graduated from my undergrad, I worked at a small nonprofit for about a year before starting the program. And in that time, I met a lot of different nonprofit leaders here in Cleveland who had MSSA, MSW, M&O degrees from the Mandel School. And I recognized that I really wanted to pursue this career path, and I needed a robust education in order to get there, and that's why I chose Mandel. So.
And I started in Jane Edna Hunter in direct services because I thought I wanted to go to law school, and I figured out I didn't want to go to law school. And then I figured out I don't necessarily want to be the one to directly help people, but I'm a systems person. So I moved into management and administration at Jane Edna while I was here in school. And for me, it was about I want to make sure that the direct services people have everything they need to be able to meet the needs of the individuals. So the desire to help and a desire to change is a motivator. But for me, data, outcomes, building processes, that's just kind of where my heart goes. And so being able to do that in a capacity that helps others is where somebody told me, you got a social work aura 2 weeks ago, and I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do about that? But the point is, it's still a desire for change, social change, and caring, but it is important to think about where and how you wanna weigh in. If you're the kind of person that cannot take off other people's emotions and can't sort of self-regulate, I'm just saying, be aware that you'll need some skills. When I was working at Jane Edna, I said I will never have a child and they will never go to daycare because I learned about abuse in daycare 30 years ago, and it just blew me away. And so I kind of did have a child years later. He didn't go to daycare. He went to my mother, but that's just my situation. But the thing is, I think, again, you learn about the field, you learn about, there's many ways to help people, but you have to also make sure you do that and be real honest with yourself. It costs too much money to get a degree to go out and work in something that you already knew you didn't want to work in while you were in a degree. So stay aware and self-aware as you're even in your schooling process.
Going, as the gentleman said down here, going into the job market right now, please believe that as a social worker, you can really make the degree work for you. It looks very different. It's just not, clinical stuff. You can go out and make the degree flexible, and that's how we keep our degree stronger. We can go out into different fields. We can go out into business. We don't be afraid to step out and use the social work degree. That's something that's, it may not seem like it aligns. I believe, like Ohio State, for example, has an agriculture, what's it called? Concentration for social work. That's innovation. So as we go forward, we can continue to be innovative with our degree because it allows us to do so. We have you're going to be experts in a lot of stuff. Don't limit yourself. Don't let someone just say, hey, you're just a social worker. Yeah, you are, but you're also so much more. You're a clinician. You're an advocate. You're a lot of stuff.
And if you use all those skills, you can make money. So forget about that myth forget about the myth that you can't make any money in nonprofits or social work, because your skills are valuable, they're transferable, and you can actually do, if you need to do, multiple things. And every organization can pay the people that do the work. A tremendous thank you again. the team here is amazing. They make all this stuff look easy, and they give us scripts and they give us stuff so we can be prepared. So we appreciate that. I want to thank our panelists as well for contributing your valuable time and talent to being here, to being prepared, to sharing your expertise. I know you all have so much more expertise to share, so I do encourage folks in the audience to use the resources and be able to reach out. And again, to remind you that on behalf of the Alumni Board, our goal this year and for the last several years has really been to make sure we're reaching out to students when you're students, because we do expect you to join us when you become alum, so we can go home, some of us, and retire. You can come back and encourage students. But again, it's all about legacy and longevity. So on behalf of the Alumni Board, we thank you for taking the time to come today, and when opportunities arise to give input about what you want from us, to please use those opportunities, because we want to make sure we are responsive.
Join me in a round of applause for our career advisors.